So in this video, we're going to be speaking about some of the content in Madame Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled, and how in my books, which is one book with two titles which mean the same thing, and the reason why I changed the title from Closer to God to A Journey to the Self is because I wanted to deter religious people and attract spiritual people, because religious people invariably are very, very closed-minded and filled with their own dogma, whereas spiritual people, by their very nature, are much more open-minded. So this book is about the spiritual nature of what it is to be a human being. And the first volume concentrates on addressing the lack of knowledge of science in relation to the supernatural, and how scientists throughout millennia have always dismissed the supernatural as complete hocus pocus, but mainly really because I think they're thoroughly embarrassed that they've got no tools whatsoever to investigate it. This particular part of the book, what I'm on now, is headed Witches and Wizards. And witches, the etymology of the word means a person to have knowledge, to be wise, and this is true to many language interpretations, so witch, mighty name, which in the past contained the promise of ignominious death, and in the present has but to be pronounced to raise a whirlwind of ridicule. So you see, in the past, under the Catholic Church mostly, hundreds of thousands of people who were wise and who practiced a little bit of, the first chemistry, homeopathy, or, even if they were conduits to the supernatural, then necromancy was something that you would be killed for. You would have been murdered in any number of horrendous ways. But like it says here, when this book was being written, 1870, 1875, something like that, the only charge against you would be ridicule. So, the ridicule still continues today in science generally, but from what I can gather, lots of scientists, albeit even if they're not coming out publicly, which quite a lot of them are most certainly starting to consider the supernatural, but what can they do? They can't actually investigate it in true scientific empirical terms, and so they don't. But people have written about the supernatural for thousands of years, people, and so in here it is speaking about the fate of witches and wizards, and speaking about discommunicated spirits, spirits that have not gone on to reside in the appropriate dimension. Speaking about spirits that haven't managed to exit the Earth's gravitational force, so to speak, for these disembodied spirits, elementals, spirits that don't go on to other dimensions, heaven or wherever we're supposed to go, but very much like in Dante's description of his trilogy in relation to the supernatural. He speaks about purgatory. So the first book is Inferno, Hell. The second book is Purgatorio, Purgatory, and the last one was Heaven. So Dante visited all three of those realms and wrote a book about all of those experiences, you know. And I've got those books on my shelf, and so we can see that many people through many years have been having experiences of these realms and knowledge of spirits and the supernatural and all that. So these books are a deep investigation into all of those phenomena. Given the tools that they had at that particular time, which basically was human intelligence, eyewitnesses and reports coming from people who were deemed to be exceedingly credible at that time. And of course seances and rapping tables and manifestations was very big in lots of European countries and America. You know, mid 1800s, early 1800s, and even people like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung went to some of these seances, meetings, to investigate them. Freud dismissed the supernatural, I think primarily because it was vastly too complex, unprovable, too much woo around it, and he wanted to be taken absolutely serious with his psychoanalysis and all that sort of thing, which is fair enough. Whereas Jung, he investigated the supernatural and alchemy and mythology and all that sort of stuff, and that was the reason why Freud and Jung separated, because Freud didn't want anything to do with what he considered to be potentially very damaging to his institution of you know, the psychoanalytical fraternity. So I'm reading stuff in this book, and I know it to be true. And some of you, I think most of you have had some sort of a paranormal, supernatural experience. And I've just been speaking to a friend, or rather listening to a message about his encounters with a poltergeist in the house, very dark, negative energy, which made noises and appearances in front of, you know, children and you know, stuff like that. And this is modern times, people. So I speak about my experiences with the supernatural in these books. And I have quite a substantial part on the negative spiritual attachments that we can have, and the spiritual attachments that we carry with us on a daily basis. Now, let me get some of the glasses that make my bloody eyes squeeze. I need 3 pairs of glasses. I need these for distance, I need these for close-up, I need those for reading. Yes, I call them gremlins, negative entities, not necessarily so evil. They're not all evil, and that's what this book speaks about. Lots of these disembodied spirits, they are just lost souls in purgatory, and in this realm, they call them elementals, then they can make certain manifestations and they can cause trouble, and because of their disgruntled personality, it would appear, then they want to create mischief, and they can get involved with the human being, maybe by entering the body or at least being in the vicinity and making their presence known, this, that and the other. So yeah, I mean, this book, of course, it's exceedingly extensive and speaks about a great deal of stuff. And it's interesting for me because I have had personal experiences which can relate to what they have been investigating for so long. And what most people don't want to get involved with today, and very few people want to study it, and those that do, of course, are very fringe. But I think there's going to come a time when we no longer can ignore the supernatural, particularly in view of the fact that our consciousness itself is a supernatural phenomenon, that there's never been a single human being which has discovered what it is or from whence it comes, but it is here. And so within that realm, there are all different sorts of other spirits, good and bad. And not a great number of them are abject evil. It seems the majority are pretty well on the lines of what most humans are like. There's many humans that have done very, very atrocious things, and so if there are these spirits around which have nefarious intentions, then well, it's reasonable to assume that they are disembodied spirits which used to reside in human beings, and not demons or ghouls or things like that, disembodied human spirits. Souls, and so for me to read up on these things and investigate them and listen to people like the New Thinking Aloud, which speaks about the supernatural with Jeffrey Mishlove, been going for years, and he is a parapsychologist, and he speaks with all different sorts of people who have interest in these realms. And I've been watching a spate of videos by a guy called Gary Lackman, who has written extensively on all different sorts of these subjects matters, like Carl Jung and Rudolf Steiner and Blavatsky, and anyone that's delved into the supernatural. P. Manning. What was his first name? Something P. Manning. I'm going to forget what his bloody name is now. But yes, so why do I investigate it? Not out of any sense of morbidity, but it's because if we are really searching for the answers as to what this thing is, then we need to look in any perceivable realm. And of course, when we are presented with something which is so massive in relation to the human being, like gods and devils and spirits and all different sorts of things like that, then I think we owe it to ourselves as an intelligent species to investigate, and so some of us do. I mean, if you have the time, then okay, and if you're independently wealthy, then great. Of course, this is why this subject matter is so, marginalised, because unless you are any of those two things, then you don't have the time. Because this particular dimension has got everybody's soul trapped in a soul prison, and they don't want anybody to investigate this stuff, just like the Catholic Church didn't want to. That's why they burnt everybody at the stake, even if they were remotely considered to have any investigation into these realms. And so in my books I speak about my encounter with Jehovah, with Jesus, with angels, with the devil, with gremlins, just annoying entities which enter or share this human experience from time to time. We can feel them come, and we know when they've left, and we can actually get rid of them if we live pure lives and have pure minds and hearts, and exhibit positive energy. But if we are negative and we don't have any consciousness about the spiritual realm, then they can very easily take possession. There are such things as possessions. That's why the Catholic Church for many years has been doing exorcisms, all this sort of stuff. But on a lighter note, without engaging in demons themselves, demonic forces which enter people and lead them to do atrocious acts of evil. Aside from that, then I speak about the everyday sort of gremlins, I call them, because they're more mischievous than they are evil, and they just thrive on causing agitation, which generates negative energy, which, one rationale is that they feed on that which is called louche. They feed on the negative energy, and you can consider this to be very feasible, because when you see like a group or a room full of people, or a family feud, or something like that, where people are really vehemently aggressive, and they look like they're possessed, don't they? And there's been times in my life when I've encountered people where, once they were just seemingly normal people, but then they appear to have been possessed literally by a demon. And you can see the demon in their faces, and the things they spoke, and how they said it, very demonic. And then these demons that made it to the forefront in a particular realm of energy, when the energy dissipates, then they too dissipate. But do they disappear entirely, or are they lying dormant in lots of people? I think they're lying dormant in lots of people, because I've seen these very similar demons come to the forefront in a person with years in between, and so that they possess them and they are residing within them, and maybe they are trying to conjure up more of this energy so they can feed on it, or they're just waiting for the opportunity to engage when it does come about. How it exactly works, who knows? But then in scenarios with friends and family, you can see people get very aggressive, and then, for instance, if one person's in a real foul mood and they enter into an office or a working environment where everybody else is just kind of normal, and then this person starts to throw this negative entity from one person to the next. How do they do this? By accusing them, by abusing them, enticing them into engaging negative energy themselves. And then when they engage in the conflict and start to retaliate, then they are generating that same negative energy, louche, within themselves. And so you can you can't physically see the gremlin jump from person to person, but you can see the result of it. And so one person could come in, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and then upset a lot of people, and then the gremlin would leap from that person onto the affected, because there's more of a resource there. It's fresh anger, and they seem to value the fresh anger, and they will go wherever the fresh anger is, you see. And so then the gremlin will be on other work members, and until they dissipate it by one shape or form, by passing it on or by taking control of their own emotions and reducing that negative energy into a positive, wholesome energy. So for those of you, if you are interested in all this sort of stuff, which I wouldn't think there's very many, because mostly people would be afraid of it. But then these books, of course, and I don't know anybody who has stated that they have read this book in its entirety, and the second volume, by the way, which basically is an assessment of religion, mostly I think Christianity, looking at all the so-called miracles and this, that and the other, and I don't know, addressing that on some level. I don't know to what extent, but this one is addressing the failings of science, and I think the second one is addressing the failings of religion, because they haven't actually spoken about the real nature of what's going on. Mostly they are instructed to close their eyes to it. It's kind of like the three monkeys of hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil, you know. Because if you do, you probably get burnt to the stake. Well, at least you would do in the old days. These days, you'll probably just get ostracized from your religion, because people would consider that you're working for the devil if you ever utter, you know, anything which could be remotely attributed to devils or demons. Anyway, there is so much to learn about all this stuff, but my personal experience came about long before, of course. I mean, I've just started to read this book, even though I bought them 6 years ago. Because of the magnitude of them, I never got round to reading them, but now I am chipping away on a daily basis, and just over halfway through on this one. You know, there's something. This particular volume, I mean, how many pages does this one have? But collectively they have 1,300 pages. So this one, yeah, it has 650 pages. 657 pages, whereas my book, the original one, I think it was 670 pages. Yes, 670. This book is slightly less, because they have condensed it a little bit more. They've took out the double gaps between paragraphs, and so this book has about 40 pages less. This one has 630 pages. But in here, I address many facets of the supernatural, many facets of my personal supernatural experiences, and why they are so important to address. Particularly if you're on the spiritual path. If you're on the spiritual path, there's no way really that you can't not address them, because if you do, then you're probably just one of these love and lighters, and you just like playing with candles and crystals, and you only want to read about love and compassion and you know, all that. Which I could very easily dismiss as nonsense, because I believe most of it is fake, but it's most certainly only half of the story. And if you're going to know the full story, then you've got to look deep within yourself. You've got to find the evil in your own hearts, people. At least you've got to find the potential of the evil in your own hearts. And, you know, for instance, when I was living in Africa and I got shot by an armed robber, I wasn't sure whether he was a paid assassin. And so to protect myself, of course, I went to buy a pump-action shotgun from the police. And I decided that if this person or anybody else comes back, then they would be filled with, you know, this lead shot, which, you know, I had 13 cartridges loaded up in this Arnold Schwarzenegger type pump-action shotgun. It was that exact same thing, which is standard police issue in most countries. So what happened to me? Well, ego was very, very pronounced, and so did a negative energy enter me, who was encouraging me to kill if the occasion came around. On the self-defense, of course, I could only do it, or would only do it, on my property in the dead of night, because, you know, anyone coming onto your property over a 9-foot wall in the dead of night isn't your friend. And in third world countries, even in America, you know, which is mostly a third world country in any case, they will shoot before they discern that you don't, in actual fact, have any valuables in the house. And that was what was happening with me. The guy shot me without discerning whether I had any money at all. And so that was one of the occasions that I could have lost my life very easily. But fortunately, the shot, the 24 4mm lead shot, are all firmly embedded in my hand and forearm, and no arteries were hit. But if, you know, I was hit in an artery here or anywhere in my body, then the chances are I wouldn't be here today. So when you are presented with a man possessed of evil, a man that will just come to shoot you before asking whether you've got any money, you are presented with evil. And I felt that evil. I felt it very, very deep and profound. And I felt that quite a lot in my life, people. So when you've had these experiences, you might get a little bit curious as to what's going on, you know, with people, and you know, why do people do evil? You see, Jordan Peterson is in his book, which I was speaking about a while ago, the one I've read recently, Maps of Meaning. In that book, that whole book, basically the theme behind that whole book is because Peterson wanted to discover the root of evil within the human being. I mean, he's a psychoanalytical person. He's a clinical psychologist. He used to be a practicing one for 25 years, and of course a lecturer on you know, human psychology, stroke philosophy, stroke mythology, you know, all that sort of stuff that he's into. And so he was deeply looking for the reasons why humans commit evil. And his latest book now, He Who Wrestles with God, you know, is doubtless a continuation of his quest to discover, you know, the nature of God, the nature of good and evil. And so, you know, in my own way, that's what I'm doing also. But because I've had encounters with good and evil, I absolutely know they exist, because I've had encounters with astral beings and negative energy gremlins and shadow beings, and then some momentary possession of negative forces throughout my life. Well, I know certainly they are a thing. And so reading books like Madame Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine give us a deep and profound insight into all this sort of stuff. And then reading stuff from Rudolf Steiner, and I suppose people like Aleister Crowley and all the rest of those, you know, so-called occultists would shed light on stuff. So anyway, people, for those of you that haven't as yet purchased your personal copy of one of these, they're both available on Amazon, and this one I think you can only get on Amazon.com, because on Amazon.co.uk this is the only one that is present. And so depending on what title you wanted, then they're both available, and this one is being sold for £5 or dollars more, because I can't change that price, because I can't go into the back of it, because this book apparently supposedly doesn't exist anymore. This one is its successor. And I think this one is a better quality cover, and I think the title is much more befitting to the things I speak about. I'm not religious in any shape or form. I decry religion vehemently, and so why would I have a book titled Closer to God? Well, that's what Spirit moved me to call it originally, and so I suppose Spirit called me, or my rationale called me later to change it, because of the traffic that book was attracting. Christians are, well, you know what I think about Christians. Anyway, people, I'll leave you with those thoughts for today, and make of it what you will.